Welcome to the 59th episode of Dialogika, a podcast between two friends about the latest in politics, society, and feminism in Indonesia and the world. I'm Swedian Lee, and surprise, surprise, I'm not in this episode. For some of you listeners who don't know, I work adjacent to politics here in America, and it's been a whirlwind last few weeks with the midterm elections to say the least. I work for a digital agency that supports a lot of political campaigns and races here, specifically Democratic races, and as we speak, votes are still being recounted in Florida and Georgia, and so the midterm elections continue to roll in this weird state, which is just a long-winded way of saying that I'll still be out for the next few weeks. Luckily, Stephanie has been plugging away and talking with some incredible people, and we're excited to share with you her conversation with a rising figure in youth politics in Indonesia, Michael Victor Sianipar. Michael used to work for Ahok and was a member of his staff during his time as governor of Jakarta, and Michael's currently a member of PSI, or the Indonesian Solidarity Party, one of the newest political parties in Indonesia with a huge youth following. This is actually going to be a two-part conversation since Stephanie and Michael talked about a lot of good stuff and we don't want to throw any of it away. So in this first episode, Stephanie talks to Michael about his experience working with Ahok from the early days of Ahok's governorship to his prison sentence. They also talk about Michael's current role as a regional leader in Jakarta local politics through PSI, and Michael also talks about how he got into politics in the first place. Like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in there, lots to learn from and reflect on, and we're excited to dig right in. So, I'm gonna shut up now, and without further ado, here's to it.
We have a very special guest today, Michael Victor Sianipar. And Michael, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Michael Victor Sianipar, and I'm working in politics right now. I've been working in politics and government for more than 6 years, since 2012. I graduated from Yonsei University, South Korea, back in 2011, and then I came back to Indonesia in 2012. My first job was as a campaign assistant to Basuki Cahayapurnama in the Jakarta gubernatorial race. Mm-hmm. And then he got elected with Jokowi, and then I started working in the city hall as vice governor's aide and then governor's aide. And right now I'm helping out 4 different governors in 4 different provinces, setting up governors teams for them.
What was your responsibilities in the governor's office?
Right now, or back when I was in Jakarta?
Back then, back
yeah.
you were Ahok.
Yeah, back then, my first assignment was to carry his phones. So Ahok, yes, Ahok used to have 13 different Blackberries.
13, 1-3.
Because each Blackberry could only have 2,000 contacts.
Wow.
So every time we maxed out on the contacts, we had to buy a new one. So every time I would carry at least 4.
Wait, so that's 26,000 contacts that he had around.
Because one of the most effective campaign strategy we had was through BlackBerry broadcast.
Right, that's so true.
Yeah,
Pre-WhatsApp
so back
group.
Then, yes, pre-WhatsApp group. So and Ahok told me that, Mike, if you want to learn politics, you gotta carry my phone, because any complaint from the citizen, from the people, you can read it and see it and then respond to it. Because you don't get to meet people that much in a campaign, but whenever a person has a problem, he or she would try to find someone who can help, and that's the job of a politician. So that's why you gotta make sure that your number is always available.
What did you kind of learn about the people in that job?
When responding to text messages and the complaints, I can see that people in Jakarta they've been waiting for someone or a leader who can connect with them. Because in Indonesia, and especially in Jakarta back then, it was very difficult for common people to have access to people in power. But then when we gave out the phone number, and when they knew that it's Ahok's direct phone number, they got excited. There are even some people who would give advice or just policy views, and it became like an extended text messages, really hoping that the governor could do something or just follow up on the recommendations that they give. But it gives them voice. That's what I like about giving out phone numbers to people, because they feel like they have direct access, they have direct communication, they have a voice.
Right. And in a way, like, I think most people's perception in Indonesia is that politics is all about who has access to that connection, right?
Yes.
That voice, like how people influence policy and politics here is based on who you know. And oftentimes people feel somewhat out of touch with that. A lot of voters sometimes feel disenfranchised because, you know, there's this perception that politics is about connections and nepotism and stuff. So part of Ahok's difference and what you were feeling was that this was something really exciting to people.
Yes. And that's what we really try to exemplify. Even this is already happened under Jokowi's governorship. We try to make sure that our doors are always open.
Right.
So every morning people would come to our office, just common people, not just high officials, but they could come to our office. So when Ahok or Jokowi got off the car, they would converse with the people. They bring complaints directly.
Right.
And then we also developed the public complaint system, Jakarta Smart City, to encourage more people communicating with us. And that is important, not just for the people outside the government, but even for civil servants. Because I realized that a lot of civil servants the civil service is very bureaucratic.
Right.
So in the past, only the agency heads could communicate with the governor.
So that's the head of whatever department they're in, right?
Right. So I remember in some of the meetings, there were some low-level officials who attended, but they didn't say anything because they were afraid that it's not their position to say a word in the meeting.
Right.
So what I'll try to do is he encouraged us, his staffs, to reach out to the low-level officials and talk with them, see if they have ideas as well.
Right.
And some of these low officials actually also have Ahok's number, and if they have something that they want to say, they can also contact directly to Ahok. But they're still being very respectful, so they don't just circumvent their bosses and report directly to the governor, but they know that there's that avenue.
Yeah.
And that helps, gives accountability, so check and balance, because agency heads know also that they can't just boss around, because their underlings, the low officials can actually report to Ahok if there's something bad or something corrupt that they do.
How long did you work with him, and what was your lasting impression of him, and what did you learn the most from him?
So I used to work for him for more than 5 years, during the first campaign up until the end of the second campaign before he got imprisoned. But the thing that I learned the most from him is definitely not his communication skills, but he's a guy who has a strong vision and determination. That's what I realized. If you want to govern well, you gotta have the grit. I remember he always had this idea of constructing light rail transit in Jakarta. And then the first idea was to have property developers in Jakarta finance the construction. That didn't happen because of some regulatory issues. And then he wanted to do it using the national budget, but also there was a problem about it. So he always tried to find alternatives until after 3 years, it was finally possible.
Right.
So when he first came into office, he had a lot of ideas of what Jakarta should be. And we would face hurdles along the way every single time. But to still have the vision, to still have the belief that you can accomplish it, if you just keep on pushing through, when other people in the city, other people in the government just thought it was impossible.
Right.
So that's a good quality that I wish to emulate as well.
Right. The last related question, like, how is he doing now, and how did you feel about the whole situation?
So he's been keeping silent. A lot of people have been trying to meet with him in the prison to just visit. But from what I know, he's been closing himself. He doesn't want to meet with a lot of people. And if you want to meet him, you have to contact through the family. I'm not sure if what he wants to do after he got out, because he should be getting out in January. And a lot of people have been asking. A lot of people have been speculating as well. But most likely he will not do much until the end of the campaign, because whatever he says will influence the result. Yeah.
How did you feel about the whole situation?
Him being imprisoned or right now?
both? Like, how did you feel as someone who worked closely with him?
So I do, even until today, I feel like it's an injustice.
Right.
I disagree with the court's ruling. I think it's a blemish in our history. But just like with Jokowi, with a lot of people around Ahok, with myself, we just have to keep on going. We have to move on.
And do you think this is kind of reflective of the politics in Indonesia to come, or was this an isolated incident?
Well, the reason why Jokowi has Maruf Amin as the vice president candidate is exactly because of what happened in 2016.
Right.
If it weren't for that, we would have a different vice president.
Right.
And that's the fact.
So Michael, besides your work with Ahok, you work with PSI.
Yeah.
What's your position there, and how did you come about to be in this position?
I've been involved in Partai Solidaritas Indonesia, Indonesian Solidarity Party, since 2015. So back when I was still working in the city hall, I started off just as a member, and then I became the head of Central Jakarta branch, and then moving up to the Jakarta provincial branch. So I'm currently the regional head of Jakarta province. And it's a new party. It's the newest party. We started off back in 2014 because right after Jokowi was inaugurated, we felt like it's not enough just to support good people like Jokowi and Ahok, because we realized if we want to keep on supporting them, we can't just support them from the outside just by becoming voluntary groups, activists. But we got to have a voice. We got to have a position in the institutional context in parliament as well. So we decided to start a political party.
Right. I mean, one of the main things is that everyone in PSI is fairly young for politics. What was the kind of vision with the youth? Why focus it around youth and people who are just different than the typical political member in Golkar or other main political parties?
We are a young party. For example, in Jakarta, my team in Jakarta.
Your administration.
Yeah, well, that's a bad choice of word, but my team in Jakarta regional branch, all of us are under 30 years old. There are 7 of us, the core team.
How old are you now, by the way?
I'm 27.
Okay. We're around the same age, right?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we are a young party, but I'm actually quite uncomfortable with calling us a youth party. We're not a youth party. We're a party for everyone, for old people and young people alike. But we just feel like running the party needs to be professional, and it is better to have more young people involved in running the party. But we do have candidates.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have candidates who are much older, 40 years old, 50 years old. But we realize that even as politicians, we're going to be old someday. So if I say, it's a young party, but does it mean that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I shouldn't be involved in the party anymore?
Yeah.
I think I should, but what we want to do is, as a professional party, is we want to provide the support system for the politicians.
Yeah.
In terms of the media, the campaign, the strategy, the idealism. But anyone can run using our party platform, regardless of age. So we want to create a distinction between the officials, the elected officials from PSI, and the people running the party. In other parties, you would have somebody becoming a member of parliament but still has control of the party, somebody becoming the governor of a province but still control the party. That's something that we want to avoid.
Why is that?
Because we don't want to have a preponderance of power. I think power corrupts, and unless we have the ability to regenerate the party, to have new blood, young people, to refresh what we do at a party, we can't be adaptive to the situations in Indonesia.
Okay. Which are changes so quickly and is super...
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we don't want to make the mistakes that other parties have. A lot of parties are owned by a person, owned by a family, or just by a circle of elites that perpetually just stay in power. For example, like Golkar and PKS, they're not owned by a family or a person, but you always see the same person, the same people
it's
running the party.
Politics in a way that is same old kind of situation.
Yes.
To put it quite diplomatically.
That is also what I tell my my friends in the party. I don't have to be the head of the regional branch. If there's somebody better than me, he or she can just run for that position next time and can just beat me, and I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that we are a meritocratic party.
Right.
Those who perform should have the opportunities.
Right. Because I know you told me at some point that you actually ran for office, right?
Yes, city council.
City council, and you became intimately aware of how much personal political ties and money influences, being in that kind of system, where it's not like a meritocratic system necessarily.
Yes. So I did run for office back in 2014 for the general election. I ran for the city council of Jakarta from Gerindra, because Ahok back then was a member of the Gerindra party. But I realized if you want to be a politician in Indonesia, you have to be very well connected, or you just have to have a lot of money. Because not to mention winning the election.
Right.
But
just
to be endorsed by a political party so that you can run for office in the first place, you gotta have good connections in the party, or else the party will just cross you out. Or you can use what we call mahar, just paying for the slot, which doesn't guarantee that you're gonna be elected, but just in order to run, you have to pay the party.
Right.
That happens a lot. So for young people like myself, it was difficult to enter politics. That's why I realized a lot of young people don't like politics. They don't see there's an opportunity. But if we have a political party that gives them opportunities, I'm sure that a lot of more young people would want to enter politics.
So let's say if one of our listeners wants to join PSI, how would they do that? And if they want to run for something, is that something people can do if they have the right qualifications? And what are the kind of qualifications you're looking for in people?
Yeah, so if you want to join a party, you can just find out from the website, contact us, and also through our social media as well. We are very open to meeting up, and we have information sessions for you guys to come and see and hear and ask questions.
Yeah,
we're comfortable with all kinds of questions. You can ask about the history, idealism, our finances, anything. So we're going to be very transparent and open about it. And if you want to run for office, you got to compete. That's what we did for this round of election. We already have a slate of candidates throughout Indonesia. But what we did was we had an open recruitment. So anyone can apply. You gotta prepare an essay for it. Just like applying for college, an essay, your CV. Yes. And then there's also the interview part. And Jakarta's selection process is a lot more difficult. I realize we had more than 300 people applying just to run for office from PSI.
Oh wow!
But we could only support 100 candidates.
Mm-hmm. That's still a lot. That's
Yes.
still a lot of candidates to support.
Yes.
But that's still 1 in 3. That's not a terrible. Getting to college generally is much slower chances than that. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
So one more thing that I think I know, and because I've known Michael for quite some time now, is that one thing to know about Michael is that he's also not from a political family, a political background, which is why I think, I think a lot of other people who are generally our age and in politics or in political parties, a lot of them come from political families or are, sons of business people and then go through that way.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think important as a part of your story and why it's different.
Yeah, sure.
You want to talk a little bit about your background?
So my parents are just all right. I mean, my family is not a business family or a political family. We're just maybe lower middle class, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of scholarship. I was on scholarship back in high school. I got a full scholarship also in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tend to say that I come from relatively humble background. But the reason why I'm interested in politics and why I'm doing this right now is because I felt like I had a lot of opportunities given to me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in high school, I took public transport bus going to school, which is in a different city.
Uh-huh. Where did
and
you
I
live?
just saw, I lived in Jakarta, but the school was in Tangerang, so I had to take public bus.
Me and Michael went to the same high school.
Which
is kind of how we know each other. But you were a year above me, right?
I think I'm 2 years above you.
2 years above you, and you're the same age. That's because Michael is very smart and got a scholarship on his intelligence.
Going back, so even when I was in high school, I realized I saw a lot of kids, beggars begging for money in the bus, and just looking at myself.
And then you come to SPH,
which is a really good school.
So for context, and which is, I think Michael is trying to like skirt around and be correct about the contrast of his going to school in public transport versus like our high school was one of like the most expensive private school with a lot of rich kids, and Michael is probably one of the only ones who went to school in the public transport. So like seeing that contrast, I think impacted you.
Yes, it was tough for me, honestly. I mean, this is getting a bit personal, but it was tough for me going to a elitist high school. But seeing what I saw in Jakarta and just the contrast, but that gave me the motivation, because I felt like I can do a lot of things in life. I can go to college abroad and have a lot of dreams and ambitions because I got the right education. I was given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And how I wish that more people have that. And I don't see a lot of people in Jakarta have that. So
you wanted to do something.
I'm not saying that. I wanted to do something. I'm not saying that this is the role of the government. I think private sector, I think charity institutions, I think religious institutions as well have a role to play in this. Mm-hmm. But I think the government can definitely help with the right regulations and also just making sure that we are not a corrupt country.
I know we've had a lot of personal discussions between you and I about like why youth need to go in politics.
Yes.
And I'm generally like, I'm going to be on the outside and criticize things that Michael do. And it's like, that's one way, which is like the activist route and reporter route. And, but what's like the, what will be your pitch about like why people and youth especially should go to politics?
All right, this is going to be a 5-minute answer because people like to ask this question. Mm-hmm. And I already have a set of answer.
Right.
So I've always been interested in politics ever since high school. I took history course and I like to read history books. And I realized that if you want to change a country, change a society, it starts from the leadership. Mm-hmm. I have an elitist mindset in that sense because I feel like if you want to abolish slavery, you had Abraham Lincoln doing that in America, and then you have Hitler in Europe that started World War. So I felt like, politics is where you can make the biggest difference. Mm-hmm. So I took political science as my undergrad major because I saw myself doing that in the future. But honestly, as a young person back in college, my original intention wasn't going to politics directly because I thought that was foolish.
Why did you think it was foolish?
Yeah, because I did believe if you want to enter politics, you need to have a lot of things settled. You need to have, you need to be financially established. You need to be well connected. You need to be strong so that you won't be tempted to be corrupt. Mm-hmm. You got to be effective, and you need to have the credentials, the education, and so on.
Right. So
my plan was to go to law school directly. I wanted to go to law school in the US. I did apply, got accepted at some schools. Mm-hmm. And then after law school, I thought of becoming a lawyer first in the US, earning some money, financially established, starting a family, and then maybe when I'm 30 years old, 35 years old, I would come back to Indonesia and do something.
Right.
So that was the plan. And I think it was a great plan, all calculated and just perfectly thought of. But when I was back in Indonesia in 2012, I was waiting for my law school application results. One day I got a notification from my dream school. I got waitlisted at that school. And I was just devastated. I thought life was unfair because I felt like I had a good intention. The reason why I want to go to law school, study, just build network is because I want to help Indonesia along the way. Mm-hmm. But why is life not working out? So I was stressful that day. And it just happened. I don't know what came into my mind, but I was just inspired to just leave home, just go outside, just walk outside. And I walked for an hour until I reached a slum in Jakarta.
Uh-huh.
A slum in Jakarta that's just located by the river and by a railroad. So just a typical Jakarta slum.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw in the river, it was midday, so it was very hot. But I saw in the river more than a dozen children swimming. And I was shocked.
Uh-huh.
Not that I didn't know children swim in rivers in Jakarta, because that always happens. But coming back from abroad.
Growing up in Jakarta.
Yeah, it's Jakarta. Yeah. But coming back from college from South Korea and then seeing that Jakarta hasn't changed. On the contrary, maybe Jakarta has only gotten more worse in terms of inequality and so on. I was just shocked.
Right.
And then I saw in one of the buildings, shanty buildings, there's a banner that says mini library. So I was curious, how could there be a library in such a place in a slum?
Mm-hmm.
So I knocked on the door, and then along came Pak Haji. So a guy came out. He was wearing a sarong, and then he invited me in, and I asked him, "Pak, why are the children swimming in the river?" So it was a stupid question.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what else to ask. So it was very awkward just being there.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Well, those children are from the other side of the river, because children from this side of the river, I've been telling them not to swim."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so how can you tell children not to swim and they listen to you? Yeah, I'm actually a religious teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a Pak Haji.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's been teaching children how to read the Quran for 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he told me that 2 years ago, some college students came and donated books. So that's why they name it a library. So it's actually a mushola, a place where people pray.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told him, okay, I'm going to come back again tomorrow. I'm going to bring books. And that's what I did. I remember buying 3 dozens of Dunkin' Donuts because I knew there were going to be kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then I carried a box of books back to the slum. And I gave out the books, the donuts. And then Pak Haji called all the children. There were 40 of them. And it's a very small building, so completely packed with children.
Yeah.
And Pak Haji told the kids, all right, we have a guest. He's been good to us. He gives us books and donuts. Let's pray for him.
Mm-hmm.
And they all started praying in Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
And just for context, I'm a Christian. I've been going to Christian schools from elementary up until college. So that was a new experience.
Mm-hmm.
But going back home after that experience, I felt like I was rebuked. I realized that I've been very arrogant in my way of thinking.
Yeah. In what way?
I thought to myself, sorry?
Arrogant in what way?
Yeah, because I thought to myself, look, Mike, you are angry, you're stressed out because your plan of going to law school just doesn't work out the way you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get accepted to your dream school. Well, I wasn't rejected either. I was waitlisted. There was still hope, but you were angry. And the reason why you're angry is because you have a lot of plans and you say that you want all these to be accomplished so that you can help out people in the future.
Mm-hmm.
After you get a good degree, after you earn your $1 million, after you become financially established, you have a family, and then you would come back to Indonesia and do something for this country.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the kids swimming in the river.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a chance of going to grad school at all? No. Do they have a chance to go to college? Maybe not. Maybe some of them would not even finish high school.
Right.
So I'm always just talking to myself, look, Mike, you only want to help people when you already have what you want. You want to help people from the top. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's okay. I mean, you become rich first and then you help out people. But that's when I realized, yes, in order to be a politician, it's important to get a good education, politically connected, experience, and so on. But I asked myself this, do I have the heart to be in politics, to help out these people? And back then, in 2012, I realized I just didn't have the heart for this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened, the week after that, I met with Ahok.
Mm-hmm.
I met with a friend who was working for Ahok, and then he invited me over. He told me, Mike, if you want to learn about politics, just follow Jokowi and Ahok. And I asked my friend, why should I support them?
Mm-hmm.
And the friend told me, well, you don't have to be too critical, but if you want to know whether a politician is someone worth supporting. You just follow them when they meet with people. You can tell from the look of their eyes whether they're being sincere or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised with that answer. I was intrigued. So that's what I did. And I followed Jokowi and Ahok. And that's when I knew that these people have the heart to be in government, to be in politics.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed me. That convinced me that, all right, I don't have to wait until I'm 30 years old or 35 years old to do something for Indonesia or for the people around me. I can just do it now. And I was fortunate I was given the opportunity, which a lot of young people don't have.
Yeah.
So what I like to tell to friends and younger people who ask me about this is, well, if you have the opportunity, just do it. You don't have to wait until you have everything, because it's just never going to be enough.
Thank you for tuning in to this first episode of a two-part conversation with Michael. Stay tuned for the second episode of the conversation coming out at the end of the month.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find more information and resources of whatever we talked about on our website, dialogika.id.
Music credits to John Dealey, Lee Roosevelt, and of course, Broke for Free.
If you like what you hear and want to support us, please review our podcast on the Apple Podcast app or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. And please share our podcast with your friends. It's the best way to spread the word about Dialogika.
If you want to get more involved, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is dialogikapodcast@gmail.com, or just shoot us a message on our Facebook page.
You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, and now Twitter. Please follow us on these various platforms. Our Twitter handle is @dialogikapod. Also, follow me on Twitter. It's Steftang. That's STEPHTANGK.
Thank you again, and see you guys next time.
Bye!